being the top of the line label maker. And I should have Googled this to see what the top brand was. But if we could, and you alluded, I was afraid you were going to stomp all over the notes. You alluded to it earlier, but these kids, especially the ones that come on the bus, they get labeled all the time. Yeah. They get all these labels.
Yeah.
But what if they come to Sunday school and we are on top of our game so much that we are that top level brand. We are the top level label maker. So when we say it, they feel a difference. They sit up straighter, and they're like, they leave Sunday school saying, I can be somebody. I can be different. God actually does love me because, Brother Matthew said so. Brother Gibbs said so.
Yeah.
And so I thought of an example. I think this is classic. There's a lot of examples, but I think of Gideon. So Gideon, the famous phrase, Gideon, the mighty man of valor, while he's hiding, right? He's scared. He's hiding, threshing the wheat. And it's kind of like, who, me? And so talk about the top brand of label maker. He gets labeled Gideon, thou mighty man of valor. And so then we see this process because he has a self-imposed label.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times in Sunday school stories, we would like to portray him as a scaredy cat. I don't know that he was necessarily. I think he was just, what we see portrayed there is probably everybody was like that. Everybody was scared in their situation. It was a bad situation. And so, but we see him go through, testing with the fleece and all of this and the, 10,000 men, the 300 and all that. So we see all of this happen. And I think there is growth that happens because he's trusting in God. And then, he goes with the spy down and spies on the camp before they do the battle with the 300.
Yeah.
And he gets some encouragement there. But the almost like a sequel, it's the same story. But I think a lot of times, when people are doing the story of Gideon, they do the 300 and blow the trumpets, and man, there was a victory wrought.
Yeah.
But there's part 2, and we've done it a few times. But that part 2 of the story, if you look at that, it's almost like it's like a different Gideon.
Oh, 100%.
You see, this Gideon is a mighty man of valor. Yeah. This Gideon does have that label. He's a man of war. He's chasing those kings.
Yeah.
Zeba and Zalmunna, and he goes and he chases them. And what is it, the Tower of Peniel? Remember that the Tower of Peniel, the Manasuka, and so he's like, I mean, what was the King James says they took him in the thorns or whatever, taught them a lesson.
Oof.
Yeah. And then the men, I think it was the Peniel, wouldn't give him any sustenance for his men and stuff because he didn't have the kings, and they're like, who are you? And so he's bold at that moment because he's like, you know what, I'm going to get the kings, I'm going to come back, I'm going to tear your tower down.
Yeah.
And so he was bad to the bone.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a mighty man of valor. So if you read the part 2 of Gideon, and then you read that first phrase in the beginning, you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, he is mighty man of valor.
Yeah.
And so God is the ultimate labeler, obviously. And so when he's changed names, Abram to Abraham, and these different things we see in the Bible, Jacob, Israel. So that's how we want to be, is what if we can make a Gideon? Or at least, we're not going to make the Gideon, but what if we can make a difference?
Yeah. As Christians, being Christ-like, we are to follow in those footsteps. And that was on my mind actually earlier as we were talking, and I think this can apply, kind of touching back into mistakes. But I thought about the prodigal son.
Yes.
He made mistakes, and he had some labels on him,
Oh, man.
And you see that even when he's coming to himself and he's saying, hey, I'm going to go back to my father's house. But he has a label of, I'm going to go as a servant.
Yes.
That's the best I can be.
That's the best I can come up with. That's the
most I can do. That's how I'm going to be accepted, is just as a servant. I can't be anything more than that. But, that's the label he had. But then when he goes to the ultimate label maker, his father, which is, type and shadow of God, the father says, no, you're not going to be a servant. You're a son.
Yes.
Let me take that label. Let me take that
yes.
label off of you and put on you a label that of power and dominion.
Yeah.
And so God is the ultimate label maker. And like I said, as people of God, we want to follow in those footsteps, and we want to be label makers that can build somebody.
Yeah.
Build somebody
we want
up.
to be an extension of that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because you think about, even in that story, the older brother, he had those labels all ready for his brother, the same ones that the brother had on himself.
Yeah.
But God's labels wipe out everything else.
Oh man, that's good. So good.
So be the ultimate label maker.